And welcome back, everybody. Book of Joshua, chapter 3. I'm Levi Chazan, coming to you from Yerushalayim. As we've seen previously, Joshua has sent out the two spies. They've checked out the land. They've seen, psychologically, the people who lived in the land of Eretz Yisrael at the time were totally destroyed. Their hearts have melted before the Jewish people. Now was the time to go and to enter into the land of Eretz Yisrael. And the first phase is, of course, to gather the people and to cross over the mighty river Jordan. And that's exactly what happens over here in chapter 3. Joshua rose up early in the morning. They moved across, and it was the end of 3 days that the officers went through the midst of the camp. Now, just to put everybody in the right time frame over here, our rabbis teach us this was the 10th of Nisan. Because if we look at it, the 3-day period over here, we're talking about 3 days after the 30 days of mourning for Moshe. Moshe, of course, died on the 7th of Adar. Bring it over to another month. Add 3 days. We are now at the 10th of Nisan. The 10th of Nisan, historical day that the Jewish people are going to encamp and move over the Jordan into the land of Eretz Yisrael proper. Commanded the people, saying that when you see the Ark of the Covenant, the Lord your God, and the priests bearing it, then you shall move from your place and go after it. So the ark will go first, then the people will break down their camps and move on over here. Now this is also an especially important day over here because we know that the Jewish people received in the 40 years in the desert 3 beautiful gifts that were given over in the merit of our 3 great leaders, Moshe, Aaron, and Miriam. In the merit of Miriam, we had the well of water. In the merit of Aaron, we had the clouds. And in the merit of Moshe, we had the man that was brought down on a daily basis. Now all of those 3 gifts are gone. Now, as we enter into the land of Eretz Yisrael, we add a new aspect. Instead of living as we did for the 40 years of the desert life in a non-natural way, all that is gone. And now as we enter the land of Eretz Yisrael, it's time to roll up our sleeves and to get busy in the physical world in a natural way, to bring out the army and to go and to conquer the land of Eretz Yisrael. There shall be a distance between you and the ark for 2,000 cubits, which roughly comes out to about a kilometer and a quarter. Do not come near it, that you may know by which way to go, for you have not passed this way before. Sort of like you need the GPS signals on over here. The ark was the GPS leading the way for the Jewish people, so they would know which way that they should go. Joshua and all the people prepared themselves for tomorrow. For tomorrow, and the Lord shall do wonders amongst you. Joshua said to the priests, carry the Ark of the Covenant, pass before the people, and they carried the Ark of the Covenant and went before the people. And the Lord said to Joshua, this is the day that I will make great in the sight of all of Israel. They shall know that just as I was with Moshe, I also will be with you. Joshua said, you shall know that the living God is amongst your midst, because it's going to be an unbelievable miracle that's going to take place over here. And Joshua said, you shall certainly drive out the inhabitants of the land of Israel, meaning the 7 nations that were living over here in the land of Israel. You shall know that you have to go in and to wipe them out and to get rid of them in order for you to live peacefully. Behold, the ark of the covenant of the Lord of the earth is crossing ahead of you in the Jordan. And it shall be when the souls of the feasts of the priests that bear the ark, they shall rest in the waters, meaning that they shall lead the way. They're carrying the ark. The priests are carrying the ark. And this is a dispute between the rabbis. Did the priests always carry the ark, or sometimes the Levites carry the ark? We have different opinions exactly who was the carrier of the ark. According to Rambam, it was permissible for the Levites to carry the ark during the time that the Jews spent in the desert, but once they entered into the land of Israel, it was only the Kohanim who carried the ark. Other opinions disagree with this and said that even in Eretz Yisrael, the Levites were permitted to carry the ark. In any case, the Kohanim at this particular point and time carried the ark. As soon as the soles of their feet entered into the waters of the Jordan, miraculously, the water shall be cut off, and they shall stand in one heap. As we remember, we're talking about a time of Chodesh Nisan, the month of Nisan, which is the month after the rainy season. You could hardly actually picture what the Jordan looked like back then, but obviously it wasn't like the Jordan today, which is sort of like a skip and a hop and you could be over it. Obviously it was a flowing, a mighty river Jordan, and much water was going down, and it was after the rainy season, and all the water was coming downhill as the Jews entered opposite Jericho. And it was when the people moved from their tents to cross the Jordan that the priests, bearing the ark of the covenant before the people, and when the bearer of the ox came to the Jordan, and the feet of the priests bore the ark, dipped into the edge of the water would stop, and this would split the Jordan, similarly to what happened in Kriyat Yamsuf, in the Reed Sea, when the Jews left Egypt. There, though, being that it was a sea, it was split into two even parts. Here, as I mentioned, the water is running downhill, so on one side of the Jordan that's been split is totally dry. The other side, the water continues to run downhill, and it's sort of like a big tower of water which is raising over the heads of the Jewish people at this time. The waters which came down and stood rose up to one column very far from Adam, the city. And the descendants of the seas and the plains of the seas were completely cut off. And the people passed over opposite the Jordan. It's mentioned over here, the city of Adam. Our rabbis state, has anyone ever heard of a city called Adam? Rather, it's talking about the merit of Avraham, who is called Adam, a great man amongst the people, amongst the nations. So in the merit of Avraham, the first Jew, the Jordan was split, and the Jews were able miraculously to cross over from one side into the other side. Not only that, because of this tremendous amount of water which was spreading out throughout the land, which was rising up and up every single second, obviously a very fearsome and scary sight. All the nations and all the kings of Canaan would be able to see this sight, and their hearts melted once again by seeing that the God of Israel is going forth and helping the Jewish people. And the priests that bore the ark of the covenant stood firm in the center of the dry land amongst the Jordan, and all the people passed over to the dry land until the whole nation had completely passed over the Jordan. Now here it is that the ark and the Kohanim were carrying the ark, stood in the midst of the Jordan. It dried up, it stopped, and the entire congregation of Israel, 2 to 3 million strong, crossed over the Jordan during this period of time, while the priests still stayed in the Jordan until everybody had conversed to the other side of the Jordan. Now this is an unbelievable sight. Obviously it's an open miracle that took place over here. Rabbi Kahana writes in the Jewish idea, Rayon HaYehudi, or Harayon, indeed the ark was the earthly seat of God, who sits upon the Keruvim. It became the symbol of God's power and Israel's obligation to trust in him. Rabbi Shmuel said in the Midrash, wherever the term is used, Adon Kol Haaretz, master of the world, which is the term that's used in our chapter over here, God is uprooting one group and bringing in another group. He's uprooting the 7 nations that live here, and in his will, he is bringing the Jewish people in. Joshua said to the Jewish people, come here. Rabbi Huna said, he made the children of Israel stand between the 2 poles of the ark. Now, this is the scene over here in the Jordan. They're crossing over the Jordan. The water is rising up on one side, and Joshua calls up all the Jewish people and says, I have something very important to tell you. And he gathered them inside the 2 poles of the ark. Rabbi Acha Rabbi Hanania said, he made them lean between the 2 poles of the ark. The rabbi said he made them fit perfectly between the two poles of the ark. Joshua said to them, from the fact that you all fit between the 2 poles of the ark, know that the divine presence is amongst you, because this is an open miracle. How is it possible that between a very, very short area, 2 poles of the ark, which were no more than maybe a half a meter, how is it possible that the entire Jewish people were able to fit inside of it? Obviously, that's an impossibility. But this was an open miracle to show the Jewish people that just as it is possible for you to fit inside these 2 poles over here, so too, God is with you, and he could do anything, whether naturally or unnaturally. Now it's interesting to note that we also find when the Beis Hamikdash stood, these types of miracle going against the physical nature, the physical laws of this world were obligated. And we find that when the Beis Hamikdash stood, for instance, the people who would come to the Beis Hamikdash during the Yom Kippur service would stand, as it says, Sfufim, they would stand tightly packed one to another. Everyone came to see the service of the high priest on Yom Kippurim. But when they bowed down, everyone had 4 amot by himself, meaning they stood so tightly packed that actually their feet didn't touch the ground in the Beis Hamikdash. But when they actually bowed down, when they heard God's name, everyone had 4 amot in order to give confessions of his sins on that particular day. And this was an open miracle that, so to speak, the ground of the Beis Hamikdash, the physical laws didn't take place over there, and it expanded in order to give everybody their 4 amot. We also find another example, and I'd like to talk briefly about that because these are important matters over here, as you know. And I only talk about important matters, as you know. The ark itself, the ark in the Beis Hamikdash, which was situated inside the Holy of Holies, actually took up no room in the Beis Hamikdash. How is that possible? The Kodesh HaKodeshim, the Holy of Holies, which contained the ark, was a room which was 20 amot, 20 amos. Now the ark itself was 10 amot. So if a person would come in with a measuring stick, and he measured from the wall to the ark, it would measure 10 amot. We mentioned the ark itself is 20 amot. From the other side of the ark to the other far side of the wall would be an additional 10 amot. If you add up all of that mathematically, you come to the realization that you're talking about an area of 30 amot. 10 amot before the ark. The ark itself is 10 amot, and 10 amot after the ark. That comes out to 30 amot. But the room itself was only 20 amot. So how is it possible that 30 amot fit into a room that's only 20 amot? That's impossible. Yes, it's impossible in our physical world. But when it comes to the Beis Hamikdash, which is God's throne in this world, the natural order of things don't exist. The laws of nature don't exist. And that's one of the examples here, in our case, that the entire Jewish people were able to fit inside the poles of the ark. Now the question that arises, and the last point that we want to bring out over here in chapter 3, the very important chapter 3, I must say, that is, what was this message that Joshua had to gather everybody and place them before the poles in order to tell them? What was so important, my dear friends, that couldn't wait another few minutes until the Jews had completed their trek and moved over to the other side of the Jordan? What could not have waited over here? Our rabbis teach us, first of all, how high was the water? Johnny Cash. How high is the water, Mama? 2 feet high and rising. How high is the water, Papa? 3 feet high and rising. So Chazal teaches us over here, Rabbi Yehuda says, 12 kilometers by 12 kilometers. Now that's pretty big. The water was piling up layer and layer, more than 300 kilometers, Rabbi Eliezer ben Rabbi Shimon says, until all the kings of the east and the west saw it. An unbelievable scene, if you must. Water building up, frightful, shocking amount of water, scary. And the Jews are trying to pass over, obviously, as fast as possible. But Yoshua stops everybody in their tracks and tells everybody, wait a minute, I have a message. Well, can't your message wait? Rabbi Kahana teaches us. I go back to the Jewish idea, of course. Faced with this shocking scene, the water rising to such heights, fear in the Israelis' hearts, Yeshua told them to stop while they were still in the Jordan because he had an important announcement to tell them. This is puzzling. What was so important that could not wait till they crossed over the Jordan? Far from the danger of the terrible flood? What was so crucial that the people had to be warned? Of all the possible commandments, what was this message that Yeshua had to tell them? Was it to study Torah? Was it to keep Sabbath? These are very important things. Was it kashrut? Loving kindness? None of the above. None of the above. Rather, Joshua told them, know why you are entering into the land of Eretz Yisroel. You are entering it in order to conquer and get rid of the 7 nations that live there. If you do so, good. And if you do not do so, these waters will come and wash me and you away. There'll be no way that we could exist in a land that also houses the 7 nations over here. This is a message that Joshua leaves for the Jewish people in the midst of the Jordan. So true in the time of Joshua, So true in our day. Well, we live amongst the enemy who every day wakes up seeking just ways to kill us. It's impossible to live in such a way. Joshua understood this, and this message was brought before the Jewish people. Know why you are entering into the land of Eretz Yisrael. He didn't tell them, no, you're entering to learn Torah, to keep kashrus. All of the above, oh, that's fine. You are entering in order to wipe out and to destroy the 7 nations. If you do so, good for you. We'll be able to exist. And if not, we will not be able to exist. How true do we know these words of Joshua today? This is Levi Chazan coming to you from Jerusalem. Until next time.